So for those people that are predominantly upper chest breathing, they're not using their diaphragm well. They tend to utilize muscles to do what we call accessory breathing.
Welcome to the Movement Driven Podcast with Dr. Greg Goldberger, where we help you bridge the gap between pain and performance. Each week, we'll share strategies, insights, and real-life applications to help you keep moving and stay driven. Now, let's get into this week's episode of the Movement Driven Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Movement Driven Podcast. I'm your host, Dara Sweat, here with Dr. Greg Goldberger. Greg, how are you doing today?
What's going on, guys? I'm doing good. How are you, Dara?
Doing good. It is Christmas Eve. I know. I literally cannot believe that we only have, this episode and one more, and then 2026 is over. It's crazy. It is so crazy. Yeah, for like my family, Christmas Eve is in our tradition, which works out well for my siblings who have significant others. We do our Christmas on Christmas Eve. So this evening we'll be going down to my mom's house and unwrapping all of our family gifts there. And then she,
Christmas is here for you. You don't even have to wait for Santa to show up. You're already here.
I know. And then
and that's why you're so excited.
I know. and then tomorrow on Christmas Day we go to Doug's side, or whatever significant other my siblings. Yeah. So then we'll do Christmas with his family. So yeah, Christmas is always great because everyone's like, oh, I can't wait for Christmas Day. I'm like, Christmas is a 2-day bender for me. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. But I bet you're excited to see the looks on your baby's faces when they open up all their gifts.
This morning is cool. Yeah, we have everybody over at our house on Christmas morning, and Brianna and I would do a big brunch and overnight French toast and the whole 9 yards, and then we do all the presents and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely the best part.
Oh, fun. Cool. Yeah. Well, I think that one thing that we all have to do during the holidays especially is breathe, right? We really have had to take lots of breaths, with the stress of everything. My wedding is literally in like 2 weeks, I think, or so. Like I'm so I can't even think straight at this point in the journey of it. But one thing that's been really helpful is practicing some breathing, which Elza and I have actually been working on together for performance as well. And I really wanted to talk about, outside of it, just, helping regulate the nervous system when you're kind of stressed out or whatever. But let's talk about the importance of breathing. Like it literally is quite literally, we have to do it or we die. So, let's get into it. Let's talk about it.
Well, I mean, let's start right there, right? Like it's something that you're doing automatically all day long. You're not thinking about it. It's happening. And it's important, obviously. But it can contribute to so many different things health-wise, especially even within the physical therapy or the orthopedic physical therapy realm. We talk about breathing mechanics. We can talk about rib cage mobility. We can talk about how that influences rotational mobility throughout your spine if you're a golfer, or how it affects your overhead lift and your shoulder mobility if you're a CrossFitter or what have you. And then, like you said, we have yoga and meditation practices that are centered around breathing, and that's how we can like tap into our nervous system in a way, and we can expand on that a little bit and do pain modulation and stress modulation. And so breathing is super important. I think we take it for granted because we're doing it automatically all day. But it is something that I think if you're a good therapist, you got to pay attention to it once in a while for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we dive into a little bit more of breathing patterns that help with, strong workouts or things like that? What are some of the breathing mechanisms that you work with your patients?
Well, I think first let's talk about like what normal breathing pattern should be. So if everybody listening at home puts one hand on their belly and one hand on their chest, and everybody just take a deep breath, breathe in and breathe out. And what I want everybody at home listening to do is kind of keep doing some deep breaths and take note of how are your hands moving. What we find in practice is people that have like a breathing dysfunction typically do a lot of upper chest breathing. So when they move, that upper hand on their chest is moving way more than that hand on their belly. And then that kind of brings us to the topic of diaphragmatic breathing. And so your diaphragm is your your muscle of inspiration. Its main function is to bring air into your lungs. And when it's doing that, it's moving in a way where we need ribs to move, we need muscles to move, we need core muscles to function for us to breathe in and breathe out. So the diaphragm is our main muscle of inspiration to bring air into our lungs. And when the diaphragm moves, what happens is it moves downward from the bottom of our rib cage to our belly, and it pushes like our abdominal contents, like organs, like our stomach and our intestines forward. So when we breathe, we should get belly movement and then chest movement, and that's proper breathing. But a lot of people just move with their chest. And so what that tells us is they're not using their diaphragm well. And if you're not using your diaphragm well, you're not oxygenating your body well. And that leads to a whole host of issues, cardiothoracic issues, potentially stress related issues, peripheral oxygen issues, stuff that is out of my pay grade issues. But it also, from the orthopedic standpoint, if we're not utilizing that diaphragm over time, then we're overutilizing other structures, or we're using our diaphragm to then try to stabilize our lumbar spine with low back pain. The list goes on and on. So for those people that are predominantly upper chest breathing, they're not using their diaphragm well, they tend to utilize muscles to do what we call accessory breathing. So there's a lot of muscles that are attached from your cervical spine, your neck, to your upper rib cage, to your first, your second rib, to your clavicle, to your sternum, that are going to then activate and pull your rib cage up when you breathe. But then that's also pulling your neck down and compressing joints in your neck. So like people with neck pain, I find a lot of the time are not diaphragmatically breathing properly. So, we can go on and on, but if you're not breathing properly, it can lead to you're not handling stress properly, you're not loading certain joints properly, the compensation, the kinetic chain type of thing we talked about last episode starts that domino effect. And so breathing is quite important for sure.
Yeah, it's I can't. I laugh when we say that because it's like it's literally breathing. So it's so important. So I
I know,
remember,
because you do it so often,
yeah.
but it's so easy for the body to compensate, and it's one of the main ways it does.
Okay, so I know that there's a couple things that Elsa has been working on with me as far as my breathing patterns because we have found out how not only do I have asthma, but also when I get stressed out, it's almost like I feel this like bulger on my chest that makes it to where like I can't get a full breath in.
Mm.
And that happens when it's high stress from like work or just a lot going on, running around and doing things, or even in the middle of workouts as well. No matter how many times I hit my inhaler. So there's a couple of things that she's working on with me. But I wanted to talk about because one of the things that you kind of just mentioned, and one things that she's talked to me too, is the compensations that are created when we aren't breathing properly. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit more, just to kind of like thinking about, especially like how professional athletes and everything else, they have like breathing training to make sure that they're breathing properly. So how can those compensations lead to possibly other injuries or creating more injury what you already have?
Yeah, so like I think like the example I just talked about, where if you're upper chest breather, you have overactive neck muscles, your traps are doing a little bit too much, then that can have an influence on neck pain specifically. Or if your traps start to move, or start to be engaged and overused, then that can have an influence on your shoulder and your scapula movement. If you're not moving, if you're not breathing well, it could be a problem with your diaphragm. Your diaphragm's second functional pattern is to stabilize the lumbar spine. So I have a lot of patients with chronic low back pain that are not breathing well and cannot not hold their breath when they're doing a lifting test, right? Like a Valsalva maneuver, something that we actually teach power lifters. But if you can't lift without doing it, even 20 pounds, then there's an issue, because now you have a whole slew of issues that your breathing is compensating for. Um, Tight hip flexors I've seen with rib flares. I've seen poor ability to rotate when your ribs aren't moving well. It's going to limit your thoracic spinal rotation. So the golfers, I do a lot of rib mobility and breathing work with my golfers for sure. So breathing, I think if you're not breathing well, there's going to be rib cage mechanics that change. It can affect the scapula. It can affect any muscles attached to that lower rib cage, attached into the pelvis. There's several of them. So like breathing has the opportunity to drive posture. Posture can dictate how well we move. And how well we move dictates if we get injuries and pain.
Hmm.
And that sounds like it's too direct of a chain, but it is kind of as simple as that sometimes.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because it's true.
Yeah.
So,
No, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So you mentioned when you were just talking now, kind of reaching overhead for something and kind of having some issues with doing that while you're trying to breathe properly. Why does breathe training help low back pain, overhead athletes, and golfers? Like how does that all tie into it?
Well, I think like if we think about the rib cage, just like any other orthopedic joint, because that's what it is. So when we breathe, we talked about how we're supposed to have that stomach movement and then that chest movement. But what's going on at the rib cage itself is we have ribs attached to our sternum, which is our chest plate up front, and that same rib goes all the way around and attached to our spine. And some ribs are floating ribs. We'll save that for another day. But when we breathe, our ribs are rotating upward and downward when we breathe out. So breathing in, it rotates up and out, and then breathing, it rotates down and in. So it's rolling and gliding just like our shoulder joint or a hip joint. And so if we're not breathing well over time, we're getting stiffer, we're losing mobility, we're losing strength within some of these muscles. And then that's going to lead to your series of kinetic chain breakdowns. So now we have ribs kind of out of position or moving into good positions, affecting all of the other adjacent things that it's attaching to. So like for your example with overhead athlete, if I can't control or mobilize my ribs through breath control, then I can't control the scapula and all the muscles attaching adjacently there. And then that's going to have an influence because my scapula is the socket of my ball and socket shoulder joint. So we use breathing not only as a way to learn to breathe so we don't have a chronic issue, but actually to mobilize the joints and to strengthen the muscles and to do isometric contractions and load the system just like we would for any other joint in the body.
Hmm. No, that's super interesting. Um, so I know that when we kind of opened up the podcast, we kind of did a little bit of a breathe in, breathe out type of thing. But
Mhm.
what are some simple drills that listeners can try? Whether ideally you want to try to do this before you're in the middle of the issue, but let's just say, for example, one that's popular, just especially with this time of year, and it's the holidays and everything else, and the new year can be crazy. What are some breathing exercises that people could do, like when they're stressed out, that might be impacting physically, obviously, but might be impacting them physically? What are some simple things that they can do?
Well, if if we talk about like from a diaphragm standpoint, I think first you have to be able to get the rhythm down, right? We have to be able to get that stomach to move, then get that chest to move in a wave-like rhythm and not just have that upper chest breathing. So just like we've talked about previously, we have to have that motor control, that muscle memory down pat first. So we have to make sure we can use the diaphragm. From then, we can do diaphragmatic breathing, which is strengthening that diaphragm by doing inspiratory muscle training. You can buy cheap devices on Amazon, things like that, to strengthen your actual diaphragm strength, or you can blow out against resistance as well. There's things they give you when you're in the hospital for a long time. Those inspiratory muscle trainers, like those are super simple, but they actually do a lot for you. Um, to one simple one I'm thinking of now that I love for diaphragm breathing is simply laying on your stomach, and then you have a tactile input of the floor on your belly. And when you breathe, you're kind of expanding your belly and your body weight away from the floor, and you're strengthening your diaphragm that way. So that's a simple one we can do on a podcast without demonstrating any video. But
Right, right.
the other part of that too, though, I think we touched on it before. I think like talking about when we talk about yoga and meditation and like why that has such a big part of like that's a big part of people's lives these days. You know what I mean? Like meditation is a big part of stress reduction. And I think breathing is at the center of that. And so if we think about like why is that happening, breathing is the only way we can tap into our autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system is our flight or fight. It's autonomic, it's automatic, right?
Mm,
We can't really control that any other way. But breathing, we have the opportunity to. Simple things like if you're hyperventilating, techniques of like breathing in and holding your breath for 4 seconds, things like breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. these are all techniques that have stemmed from being able to control and to manage stress. So you can talk to breathing experts and meditation experts that will know far more than me on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason why people love that stuff, because
Yeah.
it is regulating the nervous system and attacking stress and pain, maybe more than we can in any other way. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
affect muscle guarding and fascial stiffness, and we can change how our sensitivity is just by like changing our nervous system. Like you can even go into like blood level chemicals that I can't get into, but like how our tissues have too much oxygen or too much carbon dioxide within them. Like, are they too acidic or too basic?
Mm.
Like it gets really detailed. You can affect your endocrine system. You can affect all these things with breath control.
Wow.
So yeah, maybe I know there's a breathing expert locally. We'll definitely have to have him on a future podcast and talk
For sure.
about that stuff.
For sure. Yeah. So I think it's safe to say at least at this point, like breath work calms the alarm system so your
Sure.
body can actually move and heal. Like
Sure.
that's so cool how literally just breathing can do that.
But you think about it, like if you're okay, breathe, relax, deep breaths, like
Mm-hmm.
that's an innate thing that we all just accept to be true, but it works.
Yeah.
Because you are changing your body's hormone, the way that your brain is releasing hormones and chemicals during a fight or flight response, endorphin release and epinephrine release. And okay, well, let's take some deep breaths and give you some dopamine and serotonin and calm you down.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to necessarily be in full-fledged emergency situation. When you're in pain, your body is kind of feels like it's an emergency situation, or at least the subconscious part of your body does. And so breathing can tap into that for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think this was a super informative episode. I definitely want to slow down and take some deep breaths today just to kind
But
of
it's
check.
Christmas.
Yeah, I know. But even though it's a great day and Santa's coming to town, but like it still can be stressful anytime
Sure.
being around family. I mean, you love them, but also you count the seconds until you leave.
Everything in moderation, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you so much, Dr. Greg. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, and we'll catch you on the next one, which will be New Year's Eve.
There we go. Merry Christmas, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Movement Driven Podcast with Dr. Greg Goldberger. Want to see how we're helping people in Jacksonville bridge the gap between pain and performance? Head on over to movementdriven.com. Until next time, keep moving, stay driven.